Hi everybody, my name is Bree Milas and I'm partnering with the Who I Am Foundation to deliver you this Live Your Life series. The whole purpose and idea behind this series is to just drop some weekly motivation, inspiration, and just some general life tips and ways in which you can just go out and live a positive life week to week. What are some things that you may be lacking or want to focus a little bit more on throughout your day-to-day life? Hopefully you can find those things in ways to start to implement them into your own life to feel like you are leading and living a life with greater fulfillment and purpose. So I'm super excited to rejoin you all again for the series. We did roll it out last year, but I'm really excited to launch it again and bring it back, especially with the start of a new year. I think this is the perfect time to really think about some ways in which we want to achieve some different things this year. What are some ways that we want to change up some routines we may have had? Obviously, life has looked a lot different over the past year, so I think now people have had some time to really grasp what it looks like to live and lead a life during a pandemic, but also what are some ways in which we can continue to move forward now that we have a really good sense of what our life is looking like in these current times. So I'm so excited to deliver just these little pieces and bits of motivation and inspiration weekly over the next few weeks. I hope that you take something away from the series. Again, I think it's very ideal if you want to check it out week to week, or maybe there's just some topics that you're interested in learning about. So we're going to hit on a bunch of different topics. We're going to talk about, assessing where we're at, looking at our lives today, and kind of figuring out where we want to go in the future, moving forward throughout this next year. We're also going to come up with some visions, goals. We're going to take a look at who are the people that we have in our circle, how are they supporting us, if they are, maybe they're not. What are some ways in which we can focus on rebuilding that foundation to make it stronger so we can succeed and surround ourselves with people who really do care about our ultimate success. We're also going to look at some ways in which we can, really determine what is it that I want to do, but what are the things that may be stopping me from doing those things? How do you get over those obstacles? How do you overcome those barriers in order to ensure that you can accomplish the goals and visions that you have for yourself? In addition to that, we're just going to continue to move forward. Again, the idea is just to remain positive and be hopeful for what's yet to come in your future. So a lot of the content that will be delivered to you over the next few weeks is truly focused on developing yourself personally, professionally, ultimately just to live a life with positivity and in hopes of fulfilling whatever it is that you want to do with this time that you've been granted. So I'm super excited to get started today. We will be talking about what are some ways in which we can kind of see where we're at. So I think today's focus is really just to take some self-inventory, get a really good sense of what's working in our life, what has worked in our life in the past, as well as what's not working right now and what hasn't worked in the past, and how can we use the good and bad to kind of figure out ways in which we can begin to move forward. So starting off, I think a really good way to kind of assess where we're at, I'm going to call it a self-check. So let's check in with ourselves, take some inventory and see what are some things that are currently working in our life. I want you to try to think about 3 things you have going for you that are working well. What do those look like? Whether it be maybe financially, you have a really good structured budget and it's working really well. You've been following it day to day and you're starting to see some great changes and improvements financially. Or maybe it could be health related. Maybe you've started eating healthier, you're starting to see changes physically, emotionally, mentally. That's working really well for you. Maybe it's educationally. Maybe you've started reading more. Maybe you decided to go to school or go back to school and you're taking in a lot of knowledge and you've been really on top of establishing a good educational routine. What are those things that are working well for you right now in your life? Just try to take note of those and really hold on to that. The next thing that I want you to do is try to think about what are some things that aren't working so well in your life right now. Maybe you're having a hard time staying focused, especially maybe you're someone who has to work remotely right now due to the pandemic, and maybe you have a hard time focusing and getting tasks done. Maybe you're someone who set a bunch of goals to accomplish last year, but due to all of the unprecedented events that occurred, you weren't able to achieve those goals. And maybe there are some things that you left behind in 2020 that you still want to accomplish, hopefully, in this upcoming year. Or perhaps, you're just really struggling with developing some positive relationships with individuals in your life, friends, family, significant others, whatever that may look like for you. Maybe you want to improve upon how you can build relationships with other individuals and create a stronger circle for yourself. So really trying to take some time to think about 3 things that aren't working very well for you right now in your life. Now that you kind of have a good sense and idea of what those things may be, I want you to really think about how the good outweighs the bad, first of all, because you always have to look at the positive side in things, but really think critically about the things that are working in your life. I want you to ask yourself why you feel these things are working. Is it because you're consistent with them? Maybe you have a weekly routine, maybe it's a monthly routine where you check in and say, okay, this is why this is working. This is how I'm succeeding in this area, and it's going great. Also, I want you to try to stop and take some time to think about the areas that aren't working in your life and think critically about those. Why are you continuing to not succeed in those areas? What are some of the barriers that may be getting in the way of you being successful in those areas? And what's preventing you from moving forward on achieving what it is that you want in those areas? So really think about that. So now that you have, a good sense of what's working, what isn't working, why things are working well in your life, perhaps why they aren't working the way that you necessarily want them to, utilize the information that you have based off your own past and current lived experiences to apply them towards the things that you want to accomplish in this next year. You know the things that you are good at, and you know that you do them so well. It's almost second nature to you, right? It comes naturally. It's easy to do these things, and it's easy to succeed because you don't have to give too much thought in it. It's just working well. Use that information to apply it to the things that aren't working too well. What are you doing? What is some way in which you could do those things differently to make sure that you can succeed just as well as you're succeeding in the other areas? Sometimes I think this often means the areas that we're not succeeding too well in, it's because we don't like to succeed in those areas, right? They come as a challenge to us. They may be seen as more difficult. Maybe it's something that we don't really enjoy doing, and so we kind of put it on the back burner. I know I can be guilty of that. But what are some ways that you can start taking step by step towards succeeding, towards making it a little less intimidating or a little less challenging to navigate, to approach, and kind of move past the difficulties, right? So really start taking note of that and think about it, because ultimately, if you have a goal in front of you and you want to succeed, if it's something that you truly care about and see for yourself in the future, you shouldn't let anything get in the way or stop you from doing it well and succeeding at it. So really taking the time to assess, all right, how can I move forward? Something else that can be very helpful is thinking about actual life moments, right? So let's think about some times in our life where we've been really happy, we've felt fulfilled, we've been excited, we have been proud of ourselves, because I think sometimes, we move so quickly through life, we don't really take the time to stop and think about the things that we have been successful at, the things that we have done well, the accomplishments that we have in our life. So try to think about maybe 2, maybe 3. This could be personal, it could be professional accomplishments that you have in your life. For me, I would say a couple would be graduating and receiving my master's degree. That was a really proud moment for me in my life, and that's something that I often think about and look back on and say, wow, I did that. That's something that is a true testament of my ability to do things that I always thought were difficult or unimaginable or unattainable, but I was able to take it bit by bit, step by step, in order to succeed in that area. So that's a thing that reminds me that I can do things that at first may seem intimidating or feel overwhelming. As long as I take it step by step, piece by piece, it helps make what I'm going for appear to be a lot more attainable, a lot more possible. Things that, are achievable, things that we can reflect on in our past can help us feel more motivated, can help us feel more capable of doing these things and moving forward and striving for them, and going for bigger and better things, right? I'm pretty sure many of you can think about a time in which you had a really big opportunity in front of you, but perhaps you were afraid to kind of take that first step towards it, and say that you went for it and you took that step and you're looking back on it now like, wow, I can't believe I thought that this was going to be difficult. I can't believe I was afraid to take this opportunity, but you were able to do it. And looking back at it, you can see how much you've grown as a person, how much you've learned, how much you've gained by achieving that experience. I really want you to kind of hold on to those feelings of what those memories bring up to you, and remind yourself that you are capable of doing these things, even the things that you feel are difficult. It just means you have to be a little bit more strategic in the way in which you approach doing these things in the future, right? So now let's take some time to kind of stop and think about a moment in time where maybe you felt disappointed. Maybe you feel like you failed at something that you really wanted to accomplish. Stop and think about a way in which you were able to remember why it didn't work and what was a way in which you can move forward, and kind of learn from that mistake, right? An example for me would be I teach indoor cycling, and that's something I really love and I enjoy. But when you're applying for jobs as a cycling instructor, we have to do what's considered an audition. So part of your interview is you go in and you just demonstrate maybe 3 to 5 minutes of what your class routine would look like if you were live in action teaching a class. So I had gone in and I received a cycling audition for a gym, and I showed up for the audition and I just could not get it together. I couldn't get the music right. I couldn't get on beat. I couldn't get my counts right. It was a disaster. It was pretty embarrassing. And I just remember walking out of that room and I just knew, like, I just felt so embarrassed. I felt so disappointed in myself. I was really upset. And I was like, wow, how could I ever mess something up like that? I practiced so much. I really wanted this. How embarrassing, right? And thinking back to that time of how I felt super disappointed. I was really upset with myself. But really thinking about how I can reflect on that moment and take it as a learning lesson opposed to a mistake. I foresee that now as it was an opportunity to learn. I knew next time going into another audition, I knew what I could do differently. I knew how I could prepare in advance. Perhaps I over-prepared. I think I thought about it way too much. And I think I should have just, owned up to, yeah, perhaps that wasn't a good start, but I'm just gonna, forget about the beginning and I'm just gonna roll with this, regardless of what happened. So now I have a good sense of, I utilize that moment of failure, that moment of disappointment, embarrassment as a way in which I could move forward in the future when that situation or moment came up again. What could I do differently? What could I do better? And instead of feeling down or embarrassed, remember it as an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to grow. And that's definitely something that I've done. And I can say, as months have gone by, I've been teaching, it's been a great experience. And I think it just helped me become stronger in the end, right? Sometimes it's nice to know, yeah, we're not always as good as we think we are at certain things. So maybe sometimes we need those humbling moments, but ultimately I feel like it's just as valuable to learn from our mistakes as it is to learn from our accomplishments. So I want you all to also think about those times in which maybe you felt you let yourself down personally, professionally, maybe you felt embarrassed. But think about how you overcame that situation. And perhaps you're still struggling with that failure. Perhaps you're still struggling with not succeeding in that moment, I want you to really think and reflect on the feelings that you're harvesting about that situation, and think about ways in which you can channel that energy towards a learning moment. What is the biggest takeaway? Think about what you can do differently in the future and use it as a learning opportunity instead of a mistake. It's really about reframing the language that we use, that we place on these different moments in our life. You can either see it as a mistake, you can see it as a failure, or if you're like me, you can see it as a learning moment, an opportunity to improve, and now you know what to do in the future to be better. And I think ultimately as people, we're meant to grow, right? We're not supposed to be perfect right out the door. We're not going to perfect everything. And there are some things that we are just naturally good at. And some people are always going to be better at things than, some things that we're good at. But at the end of the day, as long as you recognize the value and power in continuing to grow, the value and power in continuing to challenge ourselves, to push ourselves outside our comfort zones, you will see how much you can gain personally and professionally as we go out and continue on in the world and live our lives. And I think more importantly, people around us will see that, and hopefully your success, your accomplishments, the way that you bounce back from these mistakes or learning opportunities will really encourage others and motivate others around you to do the same in order to succeed. So I think those are just some helpful tips and ways in which you know how to move forward. So now that you kind of have some ideas of things that you're good at, things that you've done well in the past, how you've succeeded, some different learning opportunities that you've had in the past, some things that maybe didn't work out the way you hoped to work out in the past, and the way that you saw them working out. Now that you know what's good, what's bad, what you can do, what you may need to focus a little bit more time on, I want you to think about what are some things that you have on your mind that you want to accomplish this next year. And when you're thinking about those things that you want to take on, I want you to think about a maximum of 3, no more than 3, maybe 4. But at least let one of those things be a thing that you know you can do. Easily, hands down, I got this. I'll attempt it and I will succeed at it. But I also want you to think about 1 or 2 things in which are challenging, you have been avoiding because you're afraid to step outside of that comfort zone. You're afraid to fail again or be embarrassed. But also I want you to think about maybe you attempt it and it doesn't work out. You're going to use it as a learning opportunity. It's not going to be a failure. It won't be a mistake. It's going to be an opportunity to further challenge yourself, to learn, to grow how you can be more successful in the future. And you're also going to apply some of the tactics and the techniques that you've used in the past for the things that you've achieved to be successful. So really hone in on the skills that you have. Think about ways in the past in which you've been able to achieve your goals and apply those tactics, apply those techniques to these new goals that you have, in mind for your near future. So with that being said, I just really want you to think ultimately, what are the things that you want to achieve in your life? Remember the things that you want to feel proud of by the time your time is up here. And what is it that you want people to remember about you? What are the things that when you're gone, people are going to say, oh my goodness, I will never forget this person because they always seemed like someone who was moving forward, always felt inspired, always felt motivated. And that is the type of person that I want to be surrounded by in my life. So next week, we're going to talk about, now that we have a good sense of what we want to do, we have an idea of what we've been good at in the past. We have an idea about what some of those things are that really challenge us. What are some ways in which we can start to actually put these into action? So now that we have a better idea of our vision, how do we really hone in on creating our goals and making sure that we can move forward and succeed with them? Well, thank you so much for your time. I hope that you found this information helpful. Like I said, it's going to be weekly, quick bits of information that I'll be sharing with you just to hopefully inspire you to lead a positive week. Think about some things that you want to accomplish throughout your week. And hopefully, when you come back on Sunday, you're going to gain some new tips, new motivation to carry forward with you in the following week. So remember, videos will be posted every single Sunday for the next several weeks. It'll be a different topic every week. If you do have any questions, or if you do have some past experiences that you want to share and you would feel comfortable with me sharing out to other people who are interested in hearing more, I would love to share your story. So if you have an example of some tips in which you've been successful in the past, I would love to hear them. If you have an example of a learning opportunity that you've had in the past, I would love to hear those as well. I'm happy to share them out. I have put my email contact information in the post. So if you do have any questions, if you have any stories, if you have any tips or techniques that you want to share about the content that we talked about here today, I would love to hear it, and I would love to share those stories and information. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to answer those. So thank you for spending your time with me today. My name is Bree Milas. You'll be seeing me again. And thank you so much for caring about the Who I Am Foundation, and as well as making yourself a better person.